Tonight we sail into the surprisingly peaceful, oddly organized, and occasionally ridiculous world of pirate ship life. You're not walking the plank yet, but the air is thick with salt, the deck beneath you sways, and somewhere overhead a gull screams like it's trying out for a horror movie. Your boots are soaked. Your shirt's already stuck to your back. And you've just stepped aboard one of the most misunderstood workplaces in history. You're a pirate now. Kind of. Sure, you've seen the movies, grizzled men snarling, mutiny in the air, swords drawn at the drop of a hat. But tonight, you're not here to duel or shout "ah." You're here to understand how life really works on a pirate ship. And weirdly enough, it works. There are rules. There's order. There are even committee meetings. You probably won't survive this. Scurvy, cannonballs, or a drunken duel over who gets the last pickle, take your pick. But for now, you're breathing. You're one of the crew. And you're about to find out how pirates, of all people, created one of the most structured little societies floating out there on the lawless sea. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. Let's see who else is trying to fall asleep to tales of sea-stained chaos. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You hoist your pack and trudge past the gangplank, where two toothless pirates glance at each other and shrug. You're not much to look at, just another sunburnt soul with a dream of gold and zero experience. But still, you're not thrown overboard. Not yet. A lanky man in a faded red sash introduces himself as the quartermaster, a sort of middle manager with more knives than necessary. He doesn't ask about your past. He asks if you snore. You say no, but he squints at you like he doesn't believe you. That's your first clue this ship isn't run like the Navy. This isn't about class, birthright, or royal decrees. It's about keeping the peace. Because on a pirate ship, peace means survival. You're escorted to the lower deck where hammocks swing lazily between beams and the smell of old stew fights for dominance with salt water and damp wood. Men, young, old, and in various stages of tattoo acquisition, nod at you. A few raise eyebrows. One has a monkey. You decide not to ask. A bell rings up top. The captain has something to say. He doesn't stand above you. He doesn't shout. He sits on a crate, picks at his teeth with a fish bone, and lays it out. There's a raid planned near Barbados in a week. Votes will be taken. Plans will be drawn. If you don't like it, speak now or forever swab the deck. That's your second shock. Votes. Since when do pirates vote? Turns out, since the late 1600s. Unlike the tightly controlled hierarchies of naval fleets or merchant ships, pirate crews were often deeply democratic. Most captains were elected. Their authority, based not on divine right or family wealth, but on skill, charisma, and whether they brought back enough rum last time. One historical standout, Bartholomew Roberts, aka Black Bart. His crew crafted a literal pirate constitution. Articles, rules, fines for theft, compensation for injuries. You name it. He was also famously teetotal, which is hilarious given the reputation pirates have. And here you thought it was all yo-ho-ho. The next day, you're handed your gear. Well, what counts as gear? A cutlass duller than your grandmother's kitchen knives, a pistol with one good shot in it, and a sack for personal effects. You're told to keep it light. Nobody likes a cluttered hammock. The ship's carpenter warns you not to lean too hard on the starboard railing. You ask why. He says, because it's not really there. You lean anyway. A plank creaks. You shuffle back. Lesson learned. A small group is gathered near the bow. They're whispering about the last raid, when the old cook tried to poison the captain's stew out of boredom. Didn't work, but it made the captain very regular, if you catch the drift. No mutiny followed, just a heartfelt apology and a mandatory week of latrine duty. Pirates are weirdly forgiving, as long as you don't touch their share of the loot. That night, rocking gently in your hammock, you listen to the sea slap against the hull and the distant hum of someone singing a sea shanty off-key, but enthusiastic. You reflect on your first full day in this floating madhouse, and weirdly, it feels kind of safe. Not in a warm blanket way. More like, if you don't poke the bear won't poke you. And that bear is probably also sleeping 3 hammocks down, snoring like a harpooned walrus. You've already learned something most people don't realize. Pirate ships weren't chaos. They were controlled chaos, with rules more consistent than half the countries back home. Still, historians argue whether these pirate societies truly functioned as democracies or were just clever ploys by captains to keep mutiny at bay. But even with those debates, the evidence stacks up. Pirates valued stability. They just wanted to avoid getting stabbed in their sleep. And as you drift off, hammock swaying gently, you wonder what else is going to turn out to be the opposite of what you expected. You clutch your sack of belongings close, mostly just a spare sock and a button you've convinced yourself is lucky, and try to rest. You'll need your energy. Tomorrow, they read you the rules. And yes, there's a test. Morning comes with a splash, literally, as a crewmate dumps a bucket of seawater over your hammock. You sputter upright to find him grinning, missing 3 teeth, and whistling something vaguely cheerful. "Rise and shine, barnacle," he says, before shuffling off to swab the deck with an enthusiasm that feels suspiciously caffeinated. Today is code day. No, not a day for flag signals or secret languages. Code day is when the crew, old and new, gathers to go over the most sacred artifact on board, not a golden idol or buried map, but a dog-eared, sea-stained sheet of rules. The ship's code of conduct. You expect a loud laugh, maybe someone to wink and say, "Just kidding, we do what we want." Instead, they take it seriously. Like, dead seriously. You squint at the parchment as the quartermaster unrolls it like he's unveiling the 10 Commandments. The handwriting is cramped, the ink smudged, but the message is clear. There are about a dozen rules, and you'll be expected to follow every one, or risk punishment. The good news, there's no death penalty for snoring. The bad news, stealing from another pirate is punishable by marooning. Yes, actual marooning. As in, left alone on an island with a pistol and 1 bullet. For reflection. You gulp. The first rule is all about equality of shares. Everyone gets a cut of the loot, proportioned by their role, effort, and rank. We'll get into that later. But right now, the rule that jumps out at you says, lights out by 8 bells, no gaming or music afterward. Wait. Pirates have a bedtime? Apparently, yes. The night is sacred for rest. Tired pirates make sloppy pirates, and sloppy pirates miss when firing cannons, or worse, misplace their parrot. You look around. The old-timers nod solemnly. One of them mutters, "Last time Jenkins played his fiddle after lights out, he woke up tied to the mast with sea biscuits stuffed in his boots." Your lesson is clear, don't mess with bedtime. Another clause details how disputes are handled, by vote or duel, depending on the severity. But dueling is rare, and when it does happen, it's often with blunted blades or even spoons. Nobody profits when a good man dies, the code says. That's either weirdly noble or just practical economics. Maybe both. The most surprising part? There's a clause for sabbaticals. If you need a break from pirating, you can request leave at the next port, no questions asked. Historians still argue whether this practice was widespread or more myth than fact, but some believe it points to a culture that respected personal autonomy, at least more than most 18th century employers. You get the sense the pirate code isn't about control for control's sake. It's about balance. The sea is chaos. Storms, battles, starvation, mutiny. The code is the only thing standing between the crew and total anarchy. You're handed a copy, well, not a copy. It's more like a whispered summary by a guy with a weird twitch and a fondness for metaphors involving clams. But still, it sinks in. Later, you catch the captain cleaning his boots with surprising care. He sees you watching and says, "A ship runs on trust." The code keeps men honest. Then he goes back to scrubbing, muttering about barnacles and poor craftsmanship. You think of other rules, some crews banned fighting on board entirely, even during heated arguments. Others regulated gambling, limiting it to certain hours or designated tables. One ship, according to obscure logs, even banned whistling below deck. Why? Because it tempts the wind. Superstition or soundproofing strategy? Who knows? You help scrub the deck while an older pirate named Remy tells you about a ship he once served on where the code included a specific punishment. If someone was caught stealing rum, they had to wear a carved coconut on their head for 3 days and sleep next to the bilge. Humiliating, he says, but effective. You make a mental note, don't steal rum. Or coconuts. Not everyone agrees with the code all the time. Disputes flare up. There are endless debates about wording, intent, enforcement. It's basically a pirate HOA, but with more cannonballs. One crew member argues that the rule about no dueling on Sundays is outdated. Another insists that Sunday is the best day for dueling, because the sea is calmer. No one can agree. They vote to table the discussion. Again. Historians still debate how much of this was performative versus sincere. Was the code an actual legal system or just a symbolic contract to make the crew feel organized? Some scholars say it was both a little law, a little theater, all survival. Back in your hammock that night, the rhythm of the waves syncs with your heartbeat. You think about how strange it is that a bunch of self-proclaimed criminals, outlaws of the sea, took the time to write down rules. And then follow them. Maybe it's not that strange. After all, you're all trapped in a giant floating box with limited food, infinite stress, and no escape. If someone eats your bread or borrows your pants without asking, you need a process. Otherwise, boom, knife fight over a moldy biscuit. And so, like it or not, the pirate code is your new Bible. It's not glamorous. It's not even particularly fair sometimes. But it's consistent. And that makes all the difference when your days are spent dodging cannonballs and praying for wind. You close your eyes and whisper part of the code under your breath. No man to game at cards or dice for money past 8 bells. You're not much of a gambler. But still, it's comforting to know the rules. Even if tomorrow, someone's going to break at least 3 of them. The next morning, you wake to the sound of cheers, rowdy, overlapping, a bit too energetic for this early hour. You stumble above deck expecting a fight or a sighting of land. Instead, there's a group gathered near the main mast, clapping as the quartermaster holds up a worn leather pouch. Today, he announces, we talk loot distribution. You blink. Loot distribution? Yep. It's payday. Well, share day, more precisely. Because here on this pirate ship, your work isn't rewarded with a salary. You're not an employee, you're an investor. A shareholder. And when the crew lands a prize, everyone gets a cut. You settle in with the others, cross-legged on the sun-warmed deck, as the quartermaster starts naming off amounts with all the ceremony of a bank clerk on bonus day. There's a clear structure to it. No randomness. No favoritism. The captain, he gets 2 shares. The quartermaster, 1.5. Regular crew members, like you, get 1 full share. The cook, the gunner, the powder monkey, each has a designated portion, depending on role, experience, and whether they still have all their fingers. It's surprisingly fair. You hear the murmured approval as the coins clink into hands. A silver here, a few coppers there. The loot from the last raid wasn't huge, just a merchant sloop hauling spices and fine cloth, but the math checks out. No one seems to complain, which is nothing short of miraculous. In a world where naval officers back on land often pocketed up to 90% of prize money while the sailors scraped by on crumbs, pirates flipped the model. Everyone's effort mattered. And everyone got paid accordingly. You glance at your own small pouch. Not exactly retirement-worthy, but it's more than you've ever seen handed out this easily. And with 0 paperwork. Some ships even kept ledgers, real books, complete with entries, dates, and names to ensure loot was accounted for properly. You overhear someone mention the Widder Galley, a real pirate ship that went down off Cape Cod in 1717. When it was discovered centuries later, archaeologists found not just treasure, but evidence of organized distribution. Like pirates had accountants. You shudder. The sharing doesn't stop at coin. Spoils come in many forms: bolts of silk, barrels of rum, small carved idols, even livestock. You watch 2 pirates negotiate over a live chicken. "I'll trade you 1 silk sash and a brass candlestick," one says. "Only if you throw in that weird Spanish comb," the other replies. Bartering is common, sometimes absurd. One man trades a ruby earring for an hour of hammock time in a shady spot. Another trades 2 musket balls for a lemon. A lemon, which on a ship like this is basically gold, because scurvy doesn't care about your cutlass collection. And yes, there's a section in the pirate code for all of this. Loot rules are clearly spelled out before any raid begins. Shares are agreed upon. Exceptions are made for injury, lose a limb, gain extra compensation. Historians still argue whether this was altruism or just a clever way to prevent mutiny from underpaid, angry crewmates. Either way, it worked. You watch as one of the younger pirates, barely more than a boy, receives his first full share. He beams, gripping the pouch like it might float away. His crewmates cheer. No one tries to cheat him. No one snatches his gold. Because to do so would break the code, and that, as you now know, is a one-way ticket to coconut-on-head humiliation, or worse. Later, while helping coil rope, an older sailor named Emmett explains it more plainly. "We share because if we didn't, we'd all stab each other within a week." Greed sinks faster than any cannonball. You nod. That makes sense. Greed doesn't just break morale, it breaks trust. And out here, where every storm could kill you, trust is the only thing sturdier than the hull. That afternoon, the captain announces a short shore leave for supplies and repairs. You dock near a sleepy, sun-bleached port with a leaning tavern and exactly 3 goats. The crew filters out with pockets jingling. Some blow their entire shares on rum and questionable stew. Others stash a few coins in makeshift hiding places, old boots, under floorboards, even sewn into the lining of hats. You decide to spend yours on a clean shirt, a bit of dried fruit, and what you're told is a real silver ring. It turns your finger green before dinner. Lesson learned. As the sun dips low, You return to the ship and find the quartermaster counting the loot again. You ask why. Inventory, he says. Can't let things go missing. Then he points to the smallest member of the crew, a wiry guy called Moss who wears more buttons than he has shirt. Last time we forgot inventory, Moss accidentally took home 2 lanterns and a crate of salt pork. Moss shrugs. They fell. It's all part of the pirate way. Take, divide, move on. Pirates don't hoard wealth the way kings do. They spend it fast, share it freely, and start again. You find that oddly comforting. It's not about becoming rich. It's about survival, respect, and one more night without betrayal. As you tuck your tiny green-tinted silver ring under your pillow that night, you think about how bizarrely functional it all is. A crew of criminals, following a spreadsheet of fairness. Not because they have to, but because it's the only way they can stay alive and stay sane. Pirates don't get rich by being greedy. They get rich by being united. Well, slightly rich. Until they spend it all on goats and rum. You're beginning to realize that pirate life is oddly civil. At least, compared to what you expected. No constant sword fights, no screeching parrots yelling profanities, and certainly no endless orders barked down from some tyrant in a fancy hat. In fact, the captain rarely even gives orders. Which is curious, right? Because you were raised on stories of fearsome pirate captains with wild eyes and wild beards, ruling their ships like miniature kingdoms. But here, the captain sits at the same table as the rest of the crew, eats the same dry biscuit stew, and listens just as much as he talks. Maybe more. Today is vote day. Not for who gets to walk the plank, that would be very dramatic, but no. It's a routine crew vote on which direction to sail next. There's been talk of a merchant convoy headed northwest, but also whispers of a hidden cove to the south where a shipwreck washed up silverware from a sunken Spanish galleon. The crew is torn. So the captain gathers everyone on deck, scratches his beard, and simply says, "Let's vote." And they do. One by one, pirates cast their opinions, not by ballot but by voice, or sometimes just a grunt and a pointed finger on the map. The quartermaster tallies with a charcoal-marked board. It's informal, but it works. You're floored. This isn't a dictatorship. It's more like a salty democracy. The captain only gets a vote like anyone else. And if he loses, he shrugs and says, "All right then," before adjusting the sails. No tantrums. No floggings. Just majority rule. Historians still argue whether all pirate crews operated this way, but plenty of records, like those of Captain Bartholomew Roberts, suggest they did. Roberts himself was reportedly elected by his crew. And when he died, they voted in another captain within hours. Because ships don't sail on grief, they sail on structure. Speaking of structure, you finally understand the role of the quartermaster. He's not just a glorified treasurer or supply guy. He's the balance to the captain's power. The crew trusts him to advocate for them, to settle disputes, and even to challenge the captain if needed. Yes, challenge. If the captain oversteps, the quartermaster can call for his removal. Which is wild. Imagine your office manager getting your CEO fired via impromptu tug-of-war. One pirate, a weathered woman named Salty Nora, explains it to you while mending a sail. The captain's job, she says, is to lead in battle and shut up in peace. She chuckles. Quartermaster keeps the peace. Like a big, hairy conscience. This setup prevents abuse. If the captain hoards treasure, mistreats a crew member, or tries to steer the ship into obvious doom, the crew has recourse. They can protest. They can vote. You think back to the merchant ships you've passed, with their stiff uniforms and chains of command that seem carved from stone. A sailor there disobeys, and he gets 20 lashes. A pirate disobeys, and the crew votes on whether he deserves a second chance or a hammock cleaning duty for a week. Again, it's not perfect. There are heated debates, bickering, and the occasional elbow-throwing argument about who ate the last salted herring. But the mechanisms to resolve those disputes are in place. Earlier in the day, a disagreement over weapon storage nearly turned into a brawl. One man swore someone moved his pistol. Another swore it was always in the armory. Voices rose. The captain stayed silent. Instead, the quartermaster stepped in and suggested a crew circle. Everyone stands in a ring, the two pirates explain their sides, and then the group decides what to do. Surprisingly, the group settles it calmly. One man admits he may have borrowed the pistol during target practice and forgot to return it. He apologizes. The other grumbles, then offers half a biscuit as a peace offering. Case closed. The ship moves forward. Some pirates are elected to specific roles: bosun, gunner, cook, and hold those roles as long as the crew is satisfied with them. That means, yes, the cook can technically be voted out if his stew causes too many bathroom emergencies. You pause to wonder what would happen if this system existed everywhere. Imagine voting your school principal out because of too many pop quizzes. Or replacing your dentist mid-cleaning because she played soft jazz. Revolutionary. And yet, for pirates, it's just practical. A happy crew is a loyal crew. And loyalty keeps your ship from turning into a floating cage match. There's even a bit of ceremony to elections. When a new captain or quartermaster is chosen, the crew gathers in a semicircle, weapons sheathed, boots polished. Speeches are rare, but insults are common and weirdly affectionate. "This barnacle-brained idiot saved my life once," someone yells. "He's got my vote." Another says, "He still owes me rum, but fine." When the final tally is announced, there's cheering, a few reluctant grumbles, and sometimes someone tries to do a cartwheel, which almost never ends well on a slippery deck. But the decision sticks. You're starting to see the pattern now. Everything on board, from hammocks to hammocks placement, flows from this structure of equality and mutual respect. There's still a hierarchy of skill, of experience, but it's earned, not enforced. Even the parrot, who squawks vote at the worst moments, seems to get it. Later, you overhear a debate about the next potential raid. Some argue the target is too well armed. Others say it's worth the risk. The captain listens carefully. He doesn't try to force the issue. He nods, asks questions, and then, once again, says, "Let's vote." The sails flap lazily above. The sea hums around you like a giant, breathing thing. You realize you feel something you didn't expect to feel among pirates. Agency. And that is weirdly comforting. You don't expect to feel safer on a pirate ship than you did back on land, but here you are dozing off with the lull of waves, your pouch of coins tucked under your shirt, and a strange sense that no one's going to slit your throat in your sleep. Why? Because there's rules. Actual, written, enforceable rules. The next morning, someone tacks up a piece of yellowed parchment near the mainmast. You wander over and squint at it, half expecting it to be a crude treasure map or maybe a list of who stole whose socks. But no. It's the ship's articles. The code. You skim it while chewing on a biscuit that tastes faintly of sawdust. Each line is short, direct, and surprisingly reasonable. No fighting on board. No gambling below deck. No lights after 8 bells. Weapons must be kept clean. Share loot equally. Follow the quartermaster's orders. And above all, respect the vote. It's like a dorm handbook, if dorms also carried cannons and the occasional sea shanty brawl. And here's the twist, everyone signed it. You spot familiar marks, a wonky X from Old One Eye, a blotchy palm print from Big Fin, and a perfect little cursive name that reads Cuddles, which is extra weird since no one on board has admitted to being Cuddles. Turns out, before anyone officially joins the crew, they have to agree to the code. Not verbally. In writing. Well, scrawling. But the point stands. Even illiterate pirates mark their acceptance in front of the crew, like some nautical notary service. This isn't just for show. The articles are sacred. Break them, and there are consequences. You learn this firsthand when someone violates Article 6, no theft between crew. A pirate named Griggs is caught sneaking extra rum into his private stash. When confronted, he mumbles something about just safeguarding it from evaporation. Nobody laughs. The quartermaster calls a hearing. It's not dramatic, more like a town hall in wet boots. Everyone gathers. Griggs is given a chance to explain himself. Then the crew discusses punishment. Nobody wants blood, but nobody wants to ignore it either. In the end, he's sentenced to a week of bilge duty and loses his next share. No one cheers. No one boos. Just nods and a return to business. And there it is again, that weird orderliness. The code isn't law in the royal sense. It's more like social gravity. You obey it because it works. Pirate codes varied between ships, of course. Historians still argue whether each crew wrote their own or copied from a shared template passed down between vessels. Some articles included lines about musicians getting Sundays off, or lights out by candle's end. Others mentioned bonuses for spotting enemy sails or how to split fines for desertion. And always, consequences. Not always violent ones. You expected eye gouging and floggings galore, but honestly, most punishments are meant to embarrass, not injure. A man caught cheating at dice is forced to wear a chicken feather hat for a day. Another, guilty of snoring too loudly, has to sleep on deck during rain. The point isn't pain, it's accountability. You start noticing little things. Hammocks are spaced evenly, with everyone getting roughly the same sleeping area. Meals, though terrible, are distributed in equal portions. The cook even keeps a tally to make sure no one hoards the dried peas. That's not a euphemism. They literally hoard dried peas. You remember hearing that even Blackbeard had rules. Legend says he forbade drinking in battle and made sure his crew kept their weapons ready at all times. No disorganization. No freelancing. Just structured chaos, like a flaming pirate ballet. It's so contrary to how the outside world saw them. On land, pirates were villains, filthy, violent, barely human. But on the ship, they lived by a code that put many navies and armies to shame. And while those navies ruled with rank and fear, pirates governed with consensus and shame. It's not that pirates were saints. You've seen what happens during a raid: smoke, screaming, men swinging from ropes like angry monkeys. But between the action, life is more orderly than you imagined. There's even a rule about bedtime. Yes, bedtime. No lamps or fires after a certain hour. Candles are blown out. Hammocks creak gently. And the sea provides the lullaby. If you make noise past curfew, you get a boot to the ribs. Not from an officer, but from the guy who just wants to sleep without hearing your impression of a dying walrus. You once saw a pirate forced to sleep with the goats for snoring too loud. He returned the next day smelling like hay and existential despair. It's effective. There's also a quiet rule about care. It's not written, But it exists. When a crewmate falls ill or gets injured, the others take turns watching over him. You saw Big Finn, the gruffest man on board, gently change bandages on a younger sailor's hand. No words. Just quiet care. Maybe it's selfish. Maybe they know that if you don't take care of the crew, they won't take care of you. But maybe, just maybe, it's humanity, tucked between the cannonballs. As night falls, you curl up in your hammock, your back aching and your clothes still damp from earlier rain. But your mind is surprisingly at ease. There are rules. They make the chaos less chaotic. They draw lines between fairness and folly. And as your eyelids droop, you think, if the world outside had a few more pirate articles, maybe it'd be a little more decent. Though, hopefully with better food. You wake up to shouting, but not the panicked, sword-clashing, mutiny-brewing kind. It's more like logistics. Loud logistics. Someone yelling about rope inventory. Someone else griping about spoiled flour. You sit up in your hammock and realize that today isn't a fighting day, or a feasting day. It's a maintenance day. And on pirate ships, maintenance is everyone's job. Forget the idea of lazy pirates snoozing in hammocks until the next treasure appears. This crew runs like a cranky but highly efficient floating co-op. If the sails tear, they're patched. If a cannon jams, it's cleaned and reset. If the chickens are laying fewer eggs, someone writes it down. In chalk. On the chicken crate. The ship is a living thing, and everyone on board is a mechanic. Today, your task is swabbing the deck. You imagined this would be some lowly punishment chore, reserved for new recruits or kids with too many questions. But no. Swabbing is routine. Necessary. The wood must stay clean and slick to avoid rot. Salt water is both friend and enemy, great for a dramatic splash, terrible for the lifespan of timber. You mop beside a man called Butterknife Lou, named for his unusually polite stabbing technique. Lou hums as he works, telling you the ship once nearly sank because someone let mold fester under a barrel of salt pork. Rot spreads like gossip, he says. Best to keep things tidy. Turns out, most pirate crews rotated chores. And while it's easy to romanticize pirates as disheveled rascals with no care for detail, reality bites back. Pirates needed their ships in top condition, especially because unlike Navy ships, there was no port with helpful dockworkers waiting. You fix your own problems. Or you sink. You're surprised to learn there's even a shipsmith. Not a blacksmith exactly, but someone in charge of maintaining the metal bits, nails, hinges, cannon brackets. His name is Whistle, and he has 2 fingers and a very intense relationship with rust. He explains that without proper maintenance, a cannon might backfire. And then boom, he says, you've got splinters in your spleen. That's assuming you still have a spleen. You nod and try not to visualize that. The ship's carpenter is more relaxed. He's sanding a new spar, casually humming a lullaby in a language you don't recognize. When asked about his job, he just says, I keep the floating part floating. Historians still argue whether pirate ships truly ran on this level of constant cooperation or whether such tales are idealized memoir fluff, but plenty of evidence supports the idea. Accounts from captured pirates often describe daily cleaning, equipment checks, and shared labor. Captains might lead battles, but when it came to keeping the ship afloat, even they picked up a mop now and then. You're assigned to the chicken coop next. Chickens on a pirate ship. Absolutely. Fresh eggs are precious. Less for breakfast, more for bartering. The chickens are surprisingly judgmental. One pecks your boot like it's testing your spirit. You step back and give it the respect it demands. Above deck, Someone is sewing sails. Not repairing, a full-on redesign. They've decided the ship should have a slightly more dashing silhouette. You blink. Pirates have style preferences. Of course they do. Pirate ships often customize their sails, colors, and rigging to be faster, more maneuverable, or just cooler looking. Some added extra masts. Some widened their hulls for better storage. Some even painted false gun ports on the side to look more intimidating. Trickery, but practical trickery. You spot Salty Nora adjusting ropes by hand. She's scolding a younger crewmate for over-tightening a line, which nearly snapped the whole rigging system yesterday. Her tone is sharp, but her hands are steady. "This ship's our home," she mutters. You mess with the bones, and the bones mess back. That phrase sticks with you. You start to see the ship as less of a tool, more of a partner. It breathes in the wind, creaks in its joints, responds when treated well, and punishes when neglected. You pass the hold and hear the quartermaster counting rations. There's a small chalkboard where food inventory is listed, updated daily. Bread, pork, beans, and, yes, dried peas again. You wonder if pirates have a secret pea cult. Everything, the quartermaster tells you, needs accounting. You want to eat? Check the board. You want gunpowder for a raid? Sign it out. This isn't a circus. It's a system. A slightly drunk, mildly chaotic system. But a system nonetheless. Even bathroom matters, head matters, are regulated. Pirates designate certain spots for waste, usually at the front of the ship, away from food storage and sleeping quarters. Not the most glamorous fact, but an important one. Bad hygiene equals disease. And nothing sinks morale like dysentery. Speaking of sinking morale, someone accidentally drops a barrel of salted fish overboard. There's a moment of collective mourning. Then they all laugh, shrug, and start fishing for replacements. Because that's the thing about pirate ship upkeep, it's part stress, part comedy, part disaster preparedness. As the sun sets, the crew gathers for a quick check-in. Any major damage? Any tools missing? Any suspicious squeaks in the hull? It's not a formal meeting, more like a daily debrief in dirty socks. Someone suggests putting a no whistling near the cannons rule on the board. Apparently, last time someone did it, the cannon misfired. Coincidence? Maybe. But on a pirate ship, better safe than splattered. You laugh. Then you pause. You're laughing because you belong. You, a landlubber with questionable balance and a deeply personal hatred of salted pork, are part of the upkeep crew now. You swab. You count. You listen for creaks. You tie knots, not well, but passably. And when a rope slips loose, you're the one who scrambles to fix it. Because out here, survival isn't about bravado. It's about diligence. It's about knowing which plank is cracked and which sail's about to split. It's about scrubbing mildew and making sure the drinking water hasn't turned into an ecosystem. You flop into your hammock, exhausted. Your hands are raw. Your clothes smell like rope and fish guts. And your chest is weirdly light. Clean ship. Full stomach. Working rig. You did your part. Tomorrow might bring battle. But tonight, the ship floats steady, and you helped keep it that way. You don't exactly expect democracy out here. After all, you're on a pirate ship, a place that, by every assumption, should be run by the loudest, meanest brute with the biggest hat. But this morning, as the sun slants across the deck and the smell of fried fish guts still clings to the air, you witness something wild. A vote. It starts with a simple question. Should the ship head toward Tortuga for resupply, or swing south to intercept a rumored merchant vessel. You expect the captain to just point dramatically in one direction and yell something like "hoist the mizzen," but instead, he calls for a crew meeting. Everyone gathers around the mainmast. Even Pegtooth Martin, who's nursing what might be the world's most unnecessary hangover, squints into the sun and joins in. A battered tin box appears, basically a glorified lunch pail with a slit in the top, and someone begins handing out small bits of wood. Each crew member scratches a mark on theirs and drops it in. The quartermaster tallies. South winds. Barely. But that's that. No shouting. No mutiny. Just a nod from the captain, a shrug, and an order to adjust the sails. You stare, slightly stunned. Pirates, vote. Yes, they do. Historians still argue whether pirate democracy was consistent across the Caribbean or more of a romantic myth, but there's plenty of real evidence suggesting that pirate ships, at least many of them, ran on systems far more democratic than most nations of the time. Captains were often elected. Quartermasters too. And not just at the start of a voyage, some crews re-voted periodically, or after each major event. If a captain made bad calls, ignored the code, or got a little too fond of hoarding treasure for himself, he could be removed. Not demoted. Removed. There's even a whispered tale of one captain who was voted off the ship mid-voyage and forced to row to shore with nothing but a bottle of rum and a sarcastic goodbye note tied to his boot. And here's where things get juicy. The real power on the ship often lay not with the captain, but the quartermaster. He or she, in rarer cases, was the voice of the crew, the enforcer of the ship's articles, the overseer of plunder division, and the one who held the keys to the storage hold. If the captain was the flashy figurehead, the quartermaster was the one who made sure things actually worked. Today, the quartermaster is pacing with a small notebook, muttering inventory counts and arguing quietly with a man named No-Nose Frank over the number of cannonballs. Apparently, one rolled into the sea 2 nights ago, and now it's a whole ordeal. You watch the interaction. The quartermaster isn't barking orders, he's negotiating. He's listening. And Frank, despite being missing both a nose and the majority of his left eyebrow, speaks with complete confidence. There's no groveling here. Because on this ship, everyone has a voice. Even you. That's why, when another vote arises, this time about what to do with a captured schooner, you're handed a splintered chip of wood and told, make your mark. Your crew now. The options are simple. Strip it for supplies and sink it, or keep it as a decoy for future ambushes. Arguments are made. Some passionate, some barely coherent. Someone suggests painting it pink just to confuse enemy ships. The pink plan gets 2 votes. Bold. You cast your vote for the decoy strategy. When the tally comes in, that's the winning option. You're not just swabbing decks anymore. You're participating in strategy. And while it's tempting to view this all as some utopian microcosm, don't forget this is still piracy. Votes might be equal, but loyalties shift like wind through torn sails. Betrayals happen. Leaders fall. Backroom deals are a thing, even if the room is more of a crate and the deal involves sharing tobacco rations in exchange for loyalty. Still, the voting system keeps things surprisingly stable. One sailor, all patches, tells you, the Navy whips you for asking questions. We ask before doing anything stupid. Not that we always avoid the stupid. He chuckles and lights his pipe with a burning splinter, which feels incredibly unsafe, but okay. Pirate democracy also extends to the loot. When a prize is taken, it's the quartermaster who divvies it up. There's a standard share system. Captain gets 2 shares. Quartermaster gets 1.5. Officers get 1.25. Everyone else gets 1. No favoritism. No hoarding. And if someone tries to skim off the top, another vote. And probably a new quartermaster. The idea is simple. Fairness keeps peace. If everyone has a stake, everyone has a reason to stay loyal. To fight hard. To sleep soundly. You might be risking your life tomorrow, but at least you're risking it for an equal share. Compare that to life under the Royal Navy, where common sailors got next to nothing, slept in damp corners, and ate bread full of worms while officers dined above deck. You overhear someone mutter, "Out here, you die for coin. Back there, you die for a king who doesn't know your name." You're starting to get it now. This isn't chaos. This is a counter-system. One built by the outcasts, the exiles, the escaped slaves, the disillusioned Navy men, the stubborn women in disguise, the deserters who wanted more than a crust and a shout. And democracy, even scruffy, salt-rimmed, hammock-hung democracy, is the glue that binds them. As dusk rolls in, the ship leans gently into a new heading, sails catching the breeze like soft thunderclouds. You lie back in your hammock, thinking about your vote, about the decoy ship now bobbing behind you, and about how odd it is that the most equal place you've ever lived is crewed by criminals. Not saints. Not heroes. But people organizing their tiny floating world with votes, voices, and enough shared rum to keep the peace. You smile to yourself. Who knew pirates could teach you more about politics than your high school civics class? You wake to the sound of dice clattering against wood, followed by an enthusiastic cheer and a groan that sounds almost theatrical. Somewhere in the corner of the deck, a small crowd is gathered. Not for battle. Not for a vote. But for a game. A game of chance, of course. Pirates don't exactly play Monopoly. You shuffle over, still bleary-eyed from a night of hammock dreams and creaky planks. The pot in the middle of the makeshift gaming circle includes a silver button, half a lemon, 2 musket balls, and what looks suspiciously like a human tooth. You don't ask. You just watch. This is pirate recreation, strange, loud, scrappy, and absolutely essential. Because even when you live a life where cannonballs are a daily possibility, people still need fun. They still need stories, games, jokes, and music. Otherwise, they turn into hollow-eyed sailors with nothing but sea salt and despair in their veins. That's why tonight, after dinner, dried peas again, are they breeding in the barrels? The crew sets up for what they proudly call the evening diversion. It's like a talent show, but less organized. And louder. First up is Toothless Meg, who belts out a sea shanty so intense it nearly knocks over a rum jug. Then comes One-Eyed Benny with a dramatic reading of a love letter he once wrote to a tavern waitress in Havana. It ends with, "P.S. I still have your spoon." The crew roars with laughter. You didn't expect this kind of culture at sea. But it's here. Pirate ships were floating ecosystems, not just in the sense of chores and votes, but in their need for levity. Music was common. Fiddles, drums, even makeshift flutes carved from hollow bone or cane. Singing. Constant. Especially when hauling sails or working in rhythm. It wasn't just to pass the time. It was morale. It was unity. It was the sound of not going mad. There's also storytelling. And oh boy, do pirates love stories. Some are real. Like the time Mad Mary scared off a Navy ship by lighting barrels of pitch on fire and pretending they were explosive shells. Some are less real. Like the tale of the Kraken who only eats men with curly hair. Still, you sit and listen, mesmerized by the voices around you, each one scratchy with salt and rum, each one echoing across the deck under a sky smeared with stars. Historians still argue whether pirates truly had structured downtime or whether these tales of merrymaking are the products of embellished memoirs. But the weight of anecdotal records, combined with fragments found in letters and journals, suggests that these diversions were real. Maybe not every night. Maybe not with this much singing. But real nonetheless. A crewmate sidles up to you, holding a set of crude dice carved from bone. "Fancy a go?" he asks. You sit, roll, and immediately lose a copper coin and a button you didn't realize was loose. The table cheers anyway. No one's getting rich here, this is about release. It's about being human. You also learn about the unofficial ranking system for humor on board. It goes like this. 1. Puns about the captain, risky but worth it. 2. Insults about the Navy, always a crowd pleaser. 3. Flatulence-based jokes, timeless, apparently. 4. Imitations of seagulls, a bizarrely competitive pastime. Later in the night, someone performs a dance involving one boot, a tin cup, and an inexplicable rubber chicken. You're not even sure where they got the chicken. But nobody questions it. This is pirate theater. Absurd, unrehearsed, and somehow perfect. You help clean up afterward. Bottles get tossed. Dice are collected. Someone snores into a mop. Then you spot an old sailor carving something into a plank. It's a mermaid, long hair, big eyes, and a mysterious smirk. He sees you watching and grins. "Every man needs a muse," he says. "Mine don't talk back." You smile, but also notice carvings everywhere. On the mast. On crates. Even under one of the cannon seats. Some are dates. Some are initials. Some are tiny scenes, ships, birds, stars, a tree. A tree, in the middle of the ocean. These are not just idle doodles. They're memories. Markers. Proof that someone lived here, laughed here, nearly drowned here. You scratch your own little symbol into a corner of the railing. Just a mark. A loop, a line, something yours. It feels like claiming a space. Like saying, "I was here." The ship is quiet now, except for the slow churn of the sea and the occasional snore. You lie in your hammock and think about how strange it is that pirates, these so-called savages of the sea, have built something so deeply human. They joke. They gamble. They dance on planks not because they're being punished, but because it's fun. And fun matters. Tomorrow might bring blood or boredom. But tonight was music and dice and the worst seagull impression you've ever heard in your life. And that, you realize, is just as vital as gunpowder. You wake with your arm dangling off the side of your hammock and a parrot pecking gently at your fingers. Not your parrot. In fact, you're pretty sure no one knows whose parrot this is. It just showed up one day, started yelling curse words in French, and never left. You pull your hand back and mutter a half-hearted threat. The bird glares at you, unimpressed. This is life at sea. Nothing is private. Not your hammock, not your secrets, and definitely not your breakfast, which has already been stolen by someone claiming it fell overboard, directly into my hands. Still, there's a rhythm to the day. A cadence. And like every pirate aboard this wooden, floating microcosm, you have a role assigned or self-claimed, it hardly matters. Today, you're shadowing the carpenter. The ship's carpenter is a wiry man with fingers like old rope and a voice that could sandwood all by itself. He tells you, as he hands you a chisel, "This ship breaks more than my last 3 marriages combined. And she's still less work." You believe him. Because the ship is alive. Creaking. Breathing. Demanding attention constantly. And someone has to keep her together. Pirate ships ran lean. No room for dead weight. Everyone, from the captain to the kid who accidentally glued his hand to a hatch, had to pull their share. That meant maintenance, repair, navigation, supply tracking, rigging, powder handling, and more. You'd think pirates just swung swords and shouted orders. But 90% of the time, it's patching sails, rettying lines, cleaning barrels, and yelling at each other for dropping tools overboard. You learn that the cook isn't just a job, it's a rotating position. Whoever messes up the least that week gets to not cook. Which says a lot about the quality of meals. The last stew tasted suspiciously like it included sock water. Historians still argue whether pirate crews kept professional cooks aboard or whether everyone took turns, but evidence leans toward improvisation being the norm. Below deck, the gunner is barking orders at two teenagers who can't seem to remember which end of a swab goes into the cannon. He sighs, exhausted. You'd think loading a cannon would be self-explanatory. It's not. Because each cannon has to be cleaned, loaded with gunpowder, packed, ball inserted, wadded again, aimed, and timed with the pitch of the ship. You get handed a long rod and told, try not to blow us up. No pressure. You also discover that many pirates had double roles. The navigator might also be the best fiddler. The powder monkey could be a killer storyteller. Even the surgeon, if you're lucky enough to have one, probably came from a background that included zero formal medical training and a deep belief in the healing power of rum. There's a woman on board, quiet, sharp-eyed, with arms like braided steel, who everyone calls Chains. You assume it's because of her thick, looped necklace, but when you ask, someone chuckles and says, it's 'cause she can lift a whole anchor chain if she's angry enough. You don't ask again. Chains oversees the sails. She knows every knot, every rope, every strange sound they make when the wind shifts just slightly. She teaches you 3 new knots and threatens you with an embarrassing nickname if you forget them. You don't forget. Back near the stern, there's a small cluster of pirates sitting around a barrel, sewing. Shirts, mostly. Some torn pants. One guy is fixing a stuffed monkey that's missing an ear. You raise an eyebrow and he shrugs. Can't go into battle without Lucky Greg. Fair enough. Sewing, you learn, is vital. No one's handing out spare uniforms. You patch your own clothes or you fight wind in your underpants. You also see the cooper at work, tightening the hoops on water casks, checking for leaks, swearing under his breath like it's a religious chant. A leaky barrel isn't just annoying. It could mean no water for a week. And pirates already risked scurvy, rot gut, and whatever weird disease turns your toenails green. That afternoon, Chains pulls you into the rigging. It's your first time that high, and let's just say your appreciation for gravity deepens dramatically. The ship rolls beneath you, the ocean stretching out in every direction like a glittering bruise, and all you can think is, don't fall. She laughs, seeing your panic. Don't worry. The first fall's the worst. Not if you notice. There. But you make it down, hands rope burned, legs shaking, heart hammering. You're still shaking when someone hands you a mug of something warm and vile. Drink this, they say. It'll either help or knock you out. Either way, you'll stop whining. You gulp. It's awful. It works. That evening, as the sun dips low and the sky turns the color of spilled ink, the captain addresses the crew. There's a change in course coming, new rumors, new waters, and everyone needs to prep. So the gunner starts checking powder levels. The navigator rechecks the stars. The lookout scrubs the lenses on his spyglass. The rest, they get ready in their own ways. One man sharpens a cutlass while singing a lullaby in Portuguese. Another writes something on a scrap of cloth and tucks it into his boot. You don't ask. You just watch, knowing now that this ship only works because everyone works. Pirate life isn't a constant high seas party. It's jobs. It's sweat. It's remembering which line lifts which sail and knowing how to fix a rudder with 3 nails and a prayer. But it's also deeply, weirdly satisfying. Because unlike life on land, where you might be a baker, or a shoemaker, or a sad apprentice with dreams of goat herding, out here, you're everything. You're a sailor, a handyman, a medic, a musician, a seamstress, a juggler, badly, a sky reader, and a friend. Or at least a tolerable presence in someone else's storm. The ship sways beneath you as you lean back against a barrel and exhale. The parrot lands nearby and drops a crust of bread in your lap. A peace offering, maybe. You break it in half and share. The sky this morning is moody, grayish with streaks of pink like a bruise stretching across the heavens. The sea reflects it in ripples and wrinkles, as if it's unsure what kind of day it's going to be. You've been aboard long enough now to tell the difference between a storm on the horizon and one in the cruise mood. Today feels like both. Someone's missing. No one says it at first. Just shifty glances, a little less laughter over the morning stew, still suspiciously lemony, and an unspoken tension around the mainmast. Finally, the quartermaster mutters it aloud, "Where's Hooktooth?" You know Hooktooth. Loud. Always whistling something that doesn't sound like a song so much as a musical dare. Yesterday he was cleaning his pistol with a chicken feather and arguing that sea turtles are actually government spies. Harmless. Mostly. But this morning, his hammock is empty. His boots are still there, neatly placed. That alone feels ominous. No pirate leaves their boots behind. You help search the ship. Every nook and barrel. Even check the dinghy. Nothing. And then someone finds it. A smear of red by the railing and one of Hooktooth's feathers stuck in a rope. Man overboard, someone whispers. Or worse, another mutters. Because here's the thing. Pirate ships may run on rules, on votes and rations and funny nicknames, but justice is still swift and often very final. If someone's stealing, lying, or secretly working with enemy ships, they don't just get a stern talking to. And even though most pirate codes outline fair trials, you can't help but notice no one's eager to investigate too deeply. Historians still argue whether pirate crews truly enforced trial by vote consistently or whether justice was often handed out in the shadows. The truth is likely both codes existed, but in practice, judgment could be swift and silent. Later that afternoon, the captain gathers the crew. Hooktooth is gone, he says plainly. Whether by accident, sea, or sin, we move forward. Eyes sharp. Minds sharper. No tears. No prayer. Just a few nods and the scraping sound of someone sharpening a blade a little faster than before. You feel it shift, the balance of the ship. One absence changes things. The way people talk. The way they laugh. You see fewer smiles today. More checking over shoulders. Even the parrot is quieter. That night, you're lying in your hammock when someone slides in beside you, not in the hammock, thankfully, but just close enough to whisper. You hear about the whisper hole? You blink. The what? The whisper hole. Behind the supply barrels. You got something to say, something that might save your skin or someone else's, you whisper it there. Someone always hears it. It sounds like nonsense. Or a trap. Or both. But your informant just shrugs and slips back into the dark. Pirate ships had their justice systems, yes, but also their shadow systems. Gossip networks. Secret alliances. Quiet loyalties. You remember that Hooktooth once told you he was watching someone on the crew. Got sticky fingers, he'd said. But not clever ones. Now he's gone. Coincidence? Maybe. But the more you learn about pirate justice, the more you realize it's not about law. It's about balance. A broken rule matters less than a broken bond. And trust, once lost, is rarely returned. You see it in the way the quartermaster starts watching rations more closely. How Chains triple checks the rigging. How the gunner won't leave his powder unattended for more than a few minutes. And then comes the trial. It's quiet. Barely a whisper before it happens. A young crewman, barely more than a boy, is called to stand near the mainmast. A crowd gathers without being asked. The accusation? Theft. Not from the ship, but from another pirate's personal stash. A crime like that is serious. Personal property, while not sacred, is respected. Stealing from the ship? That's selfish. Stealing from a crewmate? That's betrayal. The boy swears innocence. Says someone planted it in his kit. Cries, even. You believe him. Or want to. The vote is taken. One by one, hands rise. It's close. Very close. But the majority leans toward guilt. The punishment? Not death. Not today. He's stripped of his gear, assigned the dirtiest jobs on board, and tied to the mast overnight. It's humiliating. Cold. Painful. But he's alive. That's more than Hooktooth got. You talk to Chains later. Ask her if it was the right call. She shrugs. Doesn't matter if it was. It's done. He'll prove himself again, or he won't. That's pirate justice. Fair's got nothing to do with it. You don't sleep well that night. Because justice at sea isn't a polished courtroom with powdered wigs and gavels. It's angry votes, silent glances, the weight of reputation and fear. And sometimes, it's a rope tied quietly in the dark. Still, it works. Mostly. Because when you're on a floating powder keg, order matters. Even the rough, scary kind. The next day, you pass the boy swabbing the deck with hands that shake slightly. You give him your water ration. He doesn't speak. Just nods. There's a quiet agreement between you. No one's perfect. But second chances, those still exist. If the ship lets them. You're dozing in your hammock again, dreaming, oddly enough, about juggling oranges on a rooftop when the shout comes down from the crow's nest. Sail. Starboard. The deck erupts. Men and women spring into action like startled cats, all elbows and curses and urgency. You nearly fall out of your hammock trying to yank on your boots. The parrot, clearly delighted, squawks something deeply inappropriate and takes off flapping toward the mast. Your heart kicks into high gear. It's your first real ship sighting, not a merchant vessel on the horizon, not a fishing boat in the distance, but something different. Big sails. Fast moving. And it's headed your way. The lookout peers through his spyglass, then calls again, louder this time. Frigate. Colors unknown. And just like that, the day turns into a test. Every pirate ship dreads two things: storms and warships. And a frigate means one thing: it's either the Navy or someone who really wants to ruin your day. You rush to your station, one you didn't have an hour ago, but now suddenly do. The gunner shoves a powder horn into your hands. Run this below. Fast. And don't spill it, unless you want to become a firework. Helpful. The ship lurches as sails are trimmed and rigging is adjusted for speed. Every knot matters now. Every second shaved could be the difference between escape and battle. Or worse, capture. You dart below deck, your hands clammy around the horn of powder, the smell of sulfur and salt thick in your nostrils. Around you, the gunnery crew is preparing with alarming efficiency. Balls are loaded. Swabs are readied. Buckets of sand are spread to keep footing steady when the deck gets slick. You've never felt the ship this alive. Or this afraid. Above, the captain calls for a vote. Yes, even now, in this chaos. Because that's the pirate way. To fight, or flee, he yells. Voices rise in reply, mostly run, though a few yells stand, with a sort of manic glee. It's not a democracy in the modern sense, but captains knew better than to push an unwilling crew into battle. Historians still argue whether pirate captains truly deferred to crew votes in these moments, or whether the illusion of choice was used to maintain morale. But from where you're standing, knees knocking near a cannon, it feels very real. The vote is counted. It's close. But flight wins. So now, it's a chase. And it's not glorious. It's frantic. It's sweaty. It's noisy. The sails groan under strain. The wind howls like a drunk banshee. You help haul a rope that feels more like wrestling a python. And behind you, growing closer, are sails as white and crisp as your fear. The frigate is gaining. The navigator is barking numbers and star angles and things that sound suspiciously like guesswork. The captain doesn't blink. Just stands firm, a small smirk at the corner of his mouth, like his taunting fate. Then someone yells from the port side, "Shoals! Shallow water!" Everyone freezes. Shoals could mean safety for you or disaster for everyone. Pirates often used their familiarity with coastal waters to escape larger, heavier ships. A frigate couldn't follow where a nimble sloop could glide. But it was a gamble. One bad turn, and you're splinters on a sandbar. Do we risk it? Someone asks. The captain doesn't answer with words. Just adjusts the tiller. The ship veers. And you hold your breath. The frigate hesitates. That's your window. You fly across the waves now, skimming shallows that make your keel groan in protest. The water lightens, from dark navy to a blue so bright it looks like glass. You can see the bottom now. Coral, rocks, sand, and a stingray, just chilling. You whisper a quick apology to the sea gods. Maybe Poseidon. Maybe Davy Jones. Maybe someone with fewer grudges. And then you're through. The frigate isn't. You hear the distant creak of sails, the crack of a whip-like rope, and then, silence. The ship behind you turns away, sails wide like a disappointed parent. You made it. You sag to the deck, arms burning, face sun-hot, heart trying to crawl out your chest. Someone slaps your back. You didn't die. Congrats. Another drops beside you, muttering, "I peed a little." Not ashamed. You're laughing before you can stop. A slightly hysterical laugh. The kind that only comes after near death and narrowly avoided embarrassment. And then, as the adrenaline fades, so does the tension. The crew starts joking. The cook hands out something allegedly edible. The parrot dive bombs someone's hat. Life resumes, pirate style. You look out over the shimmering water behind you, the danger gone but the lesson still there. Pirate life isn't just rum and songs. It's tactics. It's split-second decisions. It's the gamble between pride and preservation. Some ships do fight. They turn, load every cannon, and go down blazing. Others, like yours today, survive another day with a quick turn and a lucky wind. Because survival, that's the real prize. And besides, as one pirate puts it with a grin, you can't spend gold if you're dead. The sea has moods. Today, it's feeling flirty, sunlight dances across gentle swells, dolphins arc through the air like they're performing just for you, and even the sails flap with a kind of lazy contentment. After the frigate chase, the crew deserves this moment of peace. You all do. And yet, you can't relax. Because even when the sea is kind, pirates still have work to do. You don't just drift along in hammock luxury waiting for treasure maps to float by. No, the real trick to staying afloat out here is staying busy. So you scrub. You patch. You oil ropes, you mend sails, you check barrels for rot, you untangle netting that apparently hasn't been touched since the Renaissance. You even, joy of joys, get assigned to pest duty, which means chasing rats with a stick while pretending not to scream when one glares at you. One-eyed rats are surprisingly intimidating. Pirate ships weren't just floating bars with cannons, they were fully functioning societies at sea, and survival depended on everyone pulling their weight. Unlike many Navy vessels where rank was strict and lower sailors got the worst of it, pirates often rotated duties and shared responsibility. One day you're on lookout, the next you're cooking suspicious stew, and the day after that you're ankle deep in bilge water, questioning your life choices. The quartermaster, ever watchful, is the one who keeps the rhythm going. Not the captain, surprisingly. Pirate captains were mostly wartime leaders. During peace, the quartermaster often wielded more power. He walks the deck with a book in hand, not for reading, but for noting everything. Who worked, who slacked, who borrowed someone else's flintlock and didn't return it. Your name goes in there once when you drop a crate of hardtack into the sea. In your defense, it did look like a box of rocks. Discipline is mostly gentle extra shifts, lighter rations, the occasional scolding that starts with, "I'm not mad, just disappointed," which somehow hurts more than yelling. But sometimes, just sometimes, things escalate. Take today, for example. You're midway through stitching a torn sail when Chain sidles up next to you, chewing what might be tobacco or might be tree bark. "We've got a situation," she murmurs, eyes flicking toward the galley. You peek over and see two pirates chest to chest, nose to nose, yelling about something involving a spoon, a card game, and a woman named Mirabel who may or may not exist. It escalates. Fast. Suddenly, the deck's cleared like an impromptu stage. The crew circles. Bets are placed, rum, mostly. The quartermaster steps forward with a bored expression and announces, "Duel. First to 3 strikes. No blades." You blink. Wait, duel? Yes, duels. Pirate ships didn't always descend into chaos when tempers flared. They had rules even for fights. Open conflict was allowed if it followed a code, usually overseen by the quartermaster or senior crew. Weapons were restricted. Injury was expected. Death, strongly discouraged. The two pirates square off. It's not elegant. Think, 2 drunk uncles at a family reunion who've just learned jujitsu from a pamphlet. 1 strike. 2. A stumble. A dislocated shoulder, probably. 3 strikes. The loser bows his head. Limping, bruised, pride thoroughly punctured. The winner gets a cheer, a slap on the back, and half a mango. And just like that, it's over. No grudges. No mutinies. No extra stab wounds. Just a brief, violent dance and back to work. Historians still argue whether these duels were formally part of pirate codes or informal traditions enforced by shared respect. Either way, they worked. Better than you'd expect, really. You ask the captain about it later. He's whittling a pipe from driftwood, humming something weirdly operatic. Why allow fights at all, you ask? He shrugs. Better a black eye than a mutiny. Simple logic. Efficient, too. Later, you see the duelists drinking together like old friends. One of them's got a raw potato pressed to his swollen face. The other's explaining how Mirabel was probably just a hallucination from that moldy orange. You take note. Pirate discipline isn't about perfection, it's about functioning. Getting through another day, another wave, another disagreement, without the whole crew imploding. It's rough, unpolished, and often ridiculous, but somehow, it keeps the ship afloat. And you're starting to get the rhythm. You learn to scrub without slipping. Tie knots that won't unravel. Identify weevils in flour by the smell alone, it's not pleasant. You even start sleeping better, mostly from exhaustion, but still. One afternoon, you hear singing below deck. Not the usual shanty nonsense, this one's melodic, almost haunting. You follow the sound and find the young pirate who got tied to the mast after the theft accusation. He's sitting alone, mending socks and humming to himself. You sit beside him. Quiet. Just listening. He finally speaks. Songs from my village. Mama used to sing it while pickling fish. You blink. That's oddly specific. He grins. She said fish listen better when they hear music. You sit together a while. No rats, no fights, no storms. Just the quiet hum of a ship at peace with itself, for now. That night, you help patch a bit of the sail that almost tore during the chase. It's fiddly work, needle through canvas under starlight. But it's good. Satisfying. The ship creaks like it's settling into a lullaby. Someone somewhere is playing a flute badly, but earnestly. The moonlight sparkles on the sea like a spilled bag of coins. And in that moment, discipline doesn't feel harsh or overbearing. It feels like care. Like everyone's agreed, in their own strange way, to keep this delicate ecosystem balanced. Because pirates don't last long if they can't function together. And whether it's by mop, duel, or weevil inspection, everyone has their part to play. Even you. You wake up to the smell of smoke? Not thick, panicked smoke. More like something burned, possibly on purpose. Your first thought is fire. Your second is breakfast. Sadly, it's the second one. Charred fish again, grumbles someone nearby. Chef says it's rustic. You emerge from your hammock to find a small line forming near the galley hatch. A pot bubbles ominously. The cook stirs it with the sort of glare you'd reserve for uninvited guests or cursed relics. This is the reality of pirate cuisine. Forget lavish feasts of roasted pig and tropical fruit. Most days, you're looking at salt beef, ship's biscuit, and fish if you're lucky. Maybe some dried beans. And everything smells faintly of brine, smoke, and someone else's foot. Meals are loud, messy affairs. People eat with fingers, trade bites, argue over who got the biggest piece. There's no dining etiquette. You once saw someone eat half a mango with a spoon they'd just used to scrape barnacles. No one batted an eye. But here's the strange part, it works. Despite the limited rations, you rarely hear real complaints. Maybe it's because you're all too tired to care. Or maybe it's the unspoken truth. Food is sacred. Even bad food. It's the pause between storms. The glue in the crew. Pirate ships tried to keep fresh supplies when they could. Fishing lines trailed from the stern. Rain barrels collected water. Chickens were kept in crates, and on fancier ships, maybe even a goat or two. But eventually, everything turned to hardtack and hope. Hardtack, if you've never met it, is basically baked concrete with the nutritional value of cardboard. You have to soak it in rum or broth to make it chewable. Sometimes it comes with bonus protein in the form of weevils. Extra crunch, the cook says, deadpan. Historians still argue whether pirates ate better or worse than Navy sailors. On paper, pirates had more freedom to resupply at friendly ports and trade as needed. But they also took more risks, meaning lean stretches weren't uncommon. And that's where creativity came in. Chains, your favorite walking disaster, has a trick for turning almost anything into stew. Dried eel, citrus peels, even seaweed. The key, she says, is spice. Not culinary spice, mind you, just attitude. You believe her. Her stews don't taste good, but they're definitely assertive. Then there's the rum. Ah, yes. The lifeblood of every pirate stereotype. You don't actually drink much of it yourself, mostly because you tried once and ended up weeping over a splinter. But others. It's practically currency. Used to wash wounds, bribe crewmates, toast victories, and forget failures. Still, it's rationed. The quartermaster controls the barrel key. Each crew member gets a fair share, not a flood. Drunkenness is tolerated sometimes, but rarely on duty. Pirates might love their rum, but they weren't stupid. A drunk lookout is a dead lookout. Some nights, when the stars are out and the sea is calm, the rum comes out in celebration. Not for a battle won or treasure found, but just because you've made it through another day. Someone plays a makeshift drum, an upside-down water cask. Another hums. Soon there's singing. Bad harmony, worse lyrics. But you find yourself grinning, tapping along, feeling something suspiciously close to joy. It's not about the quality of the food, or the drink, or even the music. It's about togetherness. You've never quite known a community like this, scruffy, chaotic, endlessly weird, but loyal to the bone. There's a silent pact among pirates. We survive together, or not at all. Meal times reinforce that. You eat shoulder to shoulder, no ranks, no favorites. Even the captain waits his turn. You once saw him trade his biscuit for a pickle. He looked delighted. There's no silverware. No cloth napkins. Just greasy fingers and someone yelling about who took the last onion. And yet, somehow, it feels like home. One morning, you help Chains catch a fish. You reel it in, flailing, shiny, unexpectedly majestic. She grins, slaps your back, and says, "You're finally earning your salt." You help clean it, messy, smelly, kind of tragic. But the meat's fresh, and when it sizzles in the pan, you feel a ridiculous amount of pride. At dinner, someone compliments the flavor. Chains nods toward you. Our soft one caught it. A few cheers. A half-hearted toast. A warm rush in your chest. Later, the cook leans over and whispers, "Still burned it." Fair enough. But you've learned something important. Food on a pirate ship is more than survival, it's ritual. It's rhythm. It's proof that even in a life of storms and skirmishes, there's room for shared comfort. Even if it's just charred fish and weevil crackers. The sea has changed again. Gone is the sunny ease of calm days. Now, clouds roll across the horizon like someone spilled ink across the sky. The wind picks up. The waves start slapping the hull with less rhythm and more purpose. You feel it before you see it, a low rumble, deep in your bones. A storm is coming. And not one of those polite, splashy, afternoon showers. This is the sort that makes the rigging groan and the crew mutter prayers under their breath. You're told to double knot everything, your boots, your hammock, your last ounce of self-control. Welcome to the brutal reality of pirate sailing. There are no port calls to avoid storms. No weather forecasts. No modern radar. just experience, instinct, and the occasional seagull flying the other way in a hurry. The bosun barks orders. The sails are reefed, lines secured. You're handed a job you absolutely did not ask for, securing the forward hatch, which means crawling over slippery planks while wind howls in your ears like it has unfinished business. Every drop of water feels like a slap. Your clothes are soaked in seconds. Visibility shrinks to a blur. You cling to a rope like it owes you money. And still, the ship holds. Barely. The storm isn't just weather, it's war. You fight it like you'd fight a rival crew. Coordinated, relentless, smart. Everyone knows what to do. Even Chains, who's usually 5 degrees off kilter, ties herself to a mast and shouts encouraging insults at the wind. Pirate ships, it turns out, were built with storms in mind. Low-slung hulls, reinforced rigging, watertight compartments, clever engineering born of necessity. After all, you can't pillage if your boat sinks halfway there. And yet, it's never a sure thing. Historians still argue whether pirate vessels were truly seaworthy or just barely held together with rope, resin, and bravado. Evidence points both ways. Some were repurposed naval ships, solid and formidable. Others were slapped together or borrowed and, frankly, had the durability of a wet sandwich. Yours? Somewhere in between. But as the storm crests, you realize something crucial. It's not just the ship that matters. It's the people. The crew moves as one. No hesitation. No chaos. Just focused urgency. Every rope tied, every sail trimmed, every barrel resecured below deck, it's all muscle memory now. Even you, somehow, are part of the machine. And the captain? He doesn't scream. He doesn't flail. He stands calmly at the helm, soaked, eyes narrowed, steering with a grip that might as well be carved from oak. He looks like a statue of some forgotten sea god, or at least an extremely determined fisherman. Eventually, after what feels like hours or years, the storm passes. It doesn't end exactly. It just fizzles. The rain thins. The wind softens. The ocean, once frothing and furious, slinks back into its usual simmer. You collapse onto the deck, soaked, sore, and probably missing one shoe. Around you, pirates do the same. There's laughter. Exhausted, guttural, half-crazed laughter. Because you survived. Again. The price? A cracked mast. A torn sail. A couple of bruises. And, weirdly, someone's entire stew pot, now drifting forlornly across the water like a metal jellyfish. You help with repairs. Quietly. No one talks much right after a storm. It's like you all agreed to save your words for calmer waters. That night, you gather around a small lantern in the hold. Someone passes around a flask of something sharp enough to remove paint. You drink, because your bones feel rattled and your nerves still hum like taut string. Chains tells the story of how she once survived a cyclone by clinging to a barrel of onions. Another pirate claims he sailed into a hurricane once just to see what it was like. No one believes him. But no one argues either. Storm stories are currency out here. You add yours quietly. Just a sentence or two. Enough to earn a nod. Later, lying in your hammock, you think about what it means to weather a storm, not just with sails and ropes, but with people. You didn't just survive because the ship held. You survived because you weren't alone. There's a strange peace in that. And a strange thrill, too. Because storms are terrible, but they also prove something. They show what you're made of. What your crew's made of. They strip everything down to instinct and grit. You fall asleep with the sound of the sea returning to its gentle lullaby, the faint creak of wood, the occasional cough from below deck. And in your dream, the storm plays again, but this time, you're laughing. Because you know now, pirates weren't fearless. They just faced the fear together. Morning breaks like it's apologizing. The sky is pale gold, the waves unusually polite. A few seabirds glide overhead, cawing half-heartedly, as if too tired to bother with full volume. The air smells clean again, salt, wood, and the faintest trace of wet rope. You stretch. Sore, stiff, but somehow lighter. After the storm, everything feels earned. You help haul the sails back into place. The repairs from yesterday are holding. Chains gives a rare compliment. Didn't think you'd stick it out this long. Respect. And that's when it happens. Someone spots it on the horizon. A shimmer. A silhouette. A glint of sunlight off something. Man-made. A ship. But not just a ship. Through the spyglass, you catch the first clue, the flag. Not a skull and crossbones this time, but a Navy ensign. Military. Big. Loaded with cannon. And sailing straight into your path. Royal Navy, the captain says grimly. Now your heart beats skipping double time. This is what you've all trained for. What the code prepared you for. What the equal pay and shared loot and rotating watch schedules exist to support. The moment of truth. Outnumbered, outgunned, probably out of your depth. You remember what the quartermaster said once, while fixing a snapped oar, a pirate ship runs on one thing. No, not rum. Trust. And trust is exactly what this moment requires. Within minutes, the crew is in motion. Sails tighten. Cannons roll into place. Ammunition is distributed. You take your spot assigned long ago in a quiet drill on a sleepy afternoon. Everyone knew this might happen. Everyone chose this life anyway. But something's different this time. Because you are different. You're not just a guest anymore. Or deadweight. Or that landlubber who once tripped over the anchor chain in front of everyone. You're a pirate now. Maybe not a good one. Maybe not a loud one. But your hands know the rigging. Your legs know the rhythm of the waves. And your heart, somehow, isn't panicking. Just pounding with possibility. The enemy ship looms closer. Cannons creak. Orders are whispered. You grip the railing, breath caught in your chest. And then, the enemy veers away. No shots fired. No pursuit. No grand naval showdown. Just a long, tense moment, and then calm. Guess they weren't looking for trouble, someone mutters. Maybe they saw your ship and decided the risk wasn't worth it. Maybe they were low on powder. Maybe, just maybe, they didn't want to mess with you. Historians still argue whether pirates really scared Navy ships off, or if those encounters were just exaggerated in the tavern retellings. But here, now, you know what you saw. And you're keeping that story. The tension bleeds away, replaced by laughter. Relief. Even a cheer or two. The captain nods once, just once, and turns the wheel. Back on course. The next few hours are quiet. Routine. Hammocks swaying, sails flapping, someone snoring so loudly they sound like they're soaring through a barrel. But beneath it all, there's a shift. Something unspoken. A collective breath let out. You've tasted the edge. And it didn't swallow you. That night, dinner is livelier. Not because the food is better, chain stew still tastes like regret, but because you're different. The crew welcomes you not with ceremony, but with a tossed crust of bread and a grunt of acknowledgement. That's as good as a gold medal out here. Later, you lie back on the deck, watching stars emerge, one by one, across the dark canvas of the sky. The sails ripple like whispers. The waves nudge the hull gently, like they're cradling it. You think of everything you've seen, the code, the council, the chores, the chaos, the crocodile dung sunscreen, the storms, the stew, the songs. The strange democracy of this floating outpost. It's not the life you expected, but it's a life, and it's yours. The sea is almost still now. The wind has quieted to a whisper. The stars above blink lazily, like old friends dozing off. Even the creak of the ship seems softer, less a groan, more a gentle lullaby in wood and rope. You nestle into the hammock, swaying slightly, the motion so familiar now that your body responds without thinking. The cool fabric, the faint scent of salt and smoke, it's oddly comforting. Above you, the sails billow like sleepy lungs. Around you, slow breaths rise and fall. A snore here, a murmur there. The crew, that oddball patchwork of sailors and rogues, is at peace for the night. You've made it through storms, through chaos, through moments where the world narrowed to one fraying rope and a racing heart. And now, you float. Safe, for now. Unseen by any enemy. Unbothered by the wide, endless sea. Let your limbs go heavy. Let your thoughts drift, slow and syrupy, like the last rum in a glass. Tomorrow might bring another storm, or another ship, or just more stew. But tonight, there is stillness. And in that stillness, you realize something profound. Pirates weren't just rebels. They were dreamers. People who carved out a strange, creaky, floating version of freedom. Who made rules of their own. Who found joy in the mess. And now, so have you. So rest easy, sailor. The sea is calm. Your ship is steady. And you are exactly where you're meant to be.